How's it going, everyone? It's Javi from SpongeBob1000, and in this video we're going to forecast the probability each region in the United States will experience a colder and snowier than average winter this year. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more with the content. So let's begin by taking a look at the average temperature anomalies during La Nina years, comparing La Nina years to the long-term average, and we do see that most of the northern United States, typically during a La Nina, experiences temperatures much cooler than average. And of course, the most likely scenario is that we will see a La Nina build this winter. So we should expect La Nina type conditions. And typically during a La Nina, we see temperatures much colder than average right around the northern Midwest states, where on average temperatures are right around 3 to 4 degrees below average in the extreme northern portions of the Midwest states. And we even see that cold move into the northeast as well, where we experience temperatures cooler than average. I actually made a mistake. This is supposed to be between December and February, but still between November and February, that still pretty much encompasses the entire winter. So for the most part, we still should expect much colder than average temperatures for this winter, thanks to a La Nina, at least in the northern portion of the United States. But for the southern United States, there is a higher probability that this will be likely a warmer than average winter rather than a colder and snowier than average winter, because typically during a La Nina we see conditions that are much drier than average, which of course encourages more heat to build right around the southern United States with less moisture on the surface. So as a result, I expect the southern United States to have a less likely shot of experiencing a colder winter compared to the northern United States. But we need to take a look at different factors before we can jump to that conclusion. Of course, we need to take a look at the snowfall anomaly during La Nina years, and we typically see a lot more snowfall than average right around the northern United States, where typically we see anywhere between 4 to up to 24 inches of snow above average in some areas during a La Nina year, where we see just much more snow. And this pretty much shows that we're more likely to experience a snowier than average winter for the northern United States. But not only that, when there's more snow on the ground, it's more likely the temperature will be much colder than average, because of course the snow will block the ground from absorbing the short wave radiation from the sun. So as a result, we see temperatures are much colder than average when there's more snow on the surface, and that's more likely when there's a La Nina in portions of the northern United States. But we do see that in portions of the southern United States and even portions of the Appalachian mountain ranges, we do see that there's a little bit less snow than average, which could mean that you're less likely to experience a colder and snowier than average winter. But as a result of other factors I'm gonna state in this video, I'd say we're more likely, at least for Northeast, to still experience a colder and snowier than average winter, despite the fact that the snowfall anomaly is below average at times during La Nina years, at least around the Appalachian mountain ranges. So I'm gonna go into more into detail with that later in this video. But we do see that more likely it's going to be colder and snowier for the northern United States, thanks to the fact that there's a La Nina, which typically does bring those conditions. Well, we need to take a look at other factors before we can jump to that conclusion. This is what typically happens during a La Nina. We see much more jet stream dips, much colder air moving into the United States as a result of an enhanced amount of jet stream dips, which definitely enhances the chance that we're going to see a snowier and colder than average winter for the northern United States, while for the southern United States, it's typically warmer and drier. This is as a result of the subtropical jet not really moving through the southern United States, which promotes more drier than average conditions. So I'd say the chance of a snowier and colder than average winter is less likely the more south you go. Now, another thing I want to show you guys is the temperature anomalies year to date for 2022, and this is a big data point we need to take a look at, because it really shows you what type of pattern we're more likely to experience in the future, thanks to the fact that we've experienced this pattern throughout pretty much the entire year. And we do see that for year to date in 2022, most of the lower 48 experienced warmer than average temperatures. However, the temperatures in the United States for 2022 aren't so much above average, at a point where it'll make, I'd say, a significant difference, as we could easily see these temperatures drop below average, despite the fact it's been slightly above average when it comes to temperature throughout the United States. But where you see the lighter reds, that only represents an above average temperature that's only 0.5 degrees above the average, which isn't significant at all, and a La Nina winter, as along with a negative North Atlantic oscillation, could easily shift the pattern to where it's a little bit more colder than average and what you've been experiencing for 2022. And of course, for the northern Midwest, you guys did experience colder than average conditions, and much of Canada experienced much colder than average conditions for 2022, which could represent that there's been a weak polar vortex in 2022 that has been allowing that cold air to move a little bit further southward into the northern United States. So and since it's been colder than average for much of Canada, then that could represent that the instability will reduce. There's more snow cover further southward, and that could allow the polar vortex to weaken. So as a result, I still do expect temperatures to drop below averages for much of the northern United States, despite the fact it's been warmer than average so far. But for the southern United States, I still do expect the temperatures to be warmer than average, making a colder and snowier than average winter less likely. Now, taking a look at the Drought monitor, which plays another big role in terms of the chance you will experience a colder and snowier than average winter. We see that pretty much anywhere that's just to the west of the Mississippi River Valley is under a severe drought. And of course, not only is it drier than average during a drought, but it's also typically warmer than average because there's less moisture in the soil to absorb and pretty much waste a lot of that shortwave radiation in the process of latent heat of vaporization. So since we're seeing a much more large area of dry soil throughout the United States, and that will promote more heat to build, since soil heats up a lot faster than moist soil. But while I do expect the northern United States to eventually get out of a drought as a result of a La Nina, that's going to bring the Pacific jet stream through the Northwest Pacific, bringing more troughs and moistening up the area for the most part. I still expect the southern United States, as well as the mid to southern portions of the Midwest, still experience drier and warmer than average conditions, thanks to this drought going on, making a colder and snowier than average winter less likely. And the fact that there isn't a drought along the East Coast could mean that the East Coast could be in for much more jet stream dips, because since there's of course a big ridge that's been dominating the western United States as a result of this drought, then we're more likely to see the jet stream sort of position itself to where it'll peak right around the Midwest, and then we could see much more significant jet stream dips where the conditions aren't drier than average, which will promote much colder than average conditions for the Northeast, making a colder and snowier than average winter more likely in those areas. So that's something to keep in mind, that this drought could also manipulate the jet stream quite a bit. Now, taking a look at the North Atlantic oscillation forecast. So pretty much based on the snow activity we've been seeing throughout the northern hemisphere at this time, we're seeing much larger snow extent than average. And what this could mean is that that the polar vortex is a lot weaker this year, and that's what the North Atlantic oscillation forecast suggests, as it expects that for most of the winter we should be in a negative North Atlantic oscillation, which will promote more jet stream dips thanks to a weaker polar vortex and weaker westerly winds as a result of weaker instability that's induced by a larger snow extent moving further southward, which definitely reduces the instability for those westerly winds to be strong enough enough to prevent a negative North Atlantic oscillation from occurring, which is why I do expect much of the northern United States to experience have a higher probability of experiencing a colder and snowier than average winter. Taking a look at what typically happens during a negative North Atlantic oscillation compared to a positive, we see much more jet stream dips during a negative phase, bringing colder and snowier than average conditions to much of the northern United States, more specifically the Northeast, while during a positive North Atlantic oscillation, we see the jet stream a lot stronger. We see a much stronger Greenland low and a much stronger Bermuda Azores high, which makes the westerly winds very strong for that cold air to stay further northward along with that polar vortex. So we are less likely to see that cold air dip into the United States during a positive mode. But during a negative mode, which is a more likely scenario this winter, we're more likely to experience a colder and snowier than average winter this winter as a result of the fact that we're more likely to experience a negative North Atlantic oscillation. Now, take a look at my probability forecasts of how likely it'll be you're going to experience a colder and snowier than average winter this year. So throughout the Great Lakes and the interior portions of the Northeast, I think it's extremely likely at this point you will experience a colder and snowier than average winter. This is based on the fact that negative North Atlantic oscillations expected to build, a La Nina, which typically does bring more jet stream dips, and the fact that the East Coast, especially the Northeast, is really the only area in the United States that's out of a severe drought, which I think will position the jet stream to where jet stream dips will happen more frequently in the Northeast rather than the Midwest and the West Coast, which will bring more cold air and snowier than average conditions to the Northeast, which is why I do expect the probability to be extremely likely that you will experience a colder and snowier than average winter. Very likely just the south of it. We're going to need to see how far south the jet stream dips to really determine if I could maybe move the extremely likely scenario further southward. But I still think it's very likely for much of the Interstate 95 corridor that this winter will be colder and snowier than average, thanks to the fact that we're going to experience more jet stream dips. And then likely for portions of the Pacific Northwest, I would put very likely typically during a regular La Nina year, but since much of the West Coast is under drought, that does reduce the chance that you may experience a colder and snowier than average conditions this winter. But thanks to the fact that the La Nina is still there, I still think it's more likely than not conditions will be colder and snowier than average for the Pacific Northwest. And of course, for the southern United States, I expect the chance of a colder winter to be much less likely and very unlikely for the extreme southern portions of the United States, especially the Southwest. This is as a result of the current drought that's going on, where, of course, the dry soil will heat up the air temperature a lot faster than moist soil, which will make a colder winter, of course, less likely. And since we're in a La Nina, that typically does bring warmer and drier than average conditions for the southern United States. So as a result, I expect it to be very unlikely you will experience a colder and snowier than average winter this year. But yeah, guys, if you're interested in terms of the probability you will experience a colder and snowier than average winter this year, an exact percent probability, just make sure to comment down below and I'll make sure to give you guys a more in detail forecast regarding the probability you will experience a colder and snowier than average winter this year in your specific location. So make sure to comment down below if you're interested. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys all have a great day.